What is the scariest oh heck no experience you've had? Story 1. I've posted this before somewhere, but I used to work the night shift all the time and basically shifted my whole sleep schedule over to that, to wake up 7 p.m. every day. It was fine, save for the fact that every now and then I'd have to do my grocery shopping at like 10 p.m., which wouldn't be so bad if I also didn't have epilepsy, which means I can't legally drive. So I bike everywhere, usually listening to podcasts on the way. One day I was on my way home from shopping and got to my driveway. It was one of those super long rural driveways that so many creepypasta people will go into a long 4-page long description of how creepy it is. It wasn't creepy, really, just secluded. Anyway, it's a long driveway through the woods, and I'm used to all kinds of animals jumping out and running by as I'm going down the road, but this day something felt off. I saw an animal jump out into the middle of the drive, and I just stopped waiting for it to scurry off. I honestly thought it was a deer because they're stupid and everywhere. But then my lights caught the eye shine, and I realized it was way too low to be a deer. My next thought was, oh great, it's one of the coyotes that we keep seeing in the backyard. I unplugged my headphones and turned my music up as loud as it'll go. I had a Lumia 635, which had a loud as frick speaker. I started stomping my feet and trying to scare the dumb coyote out. I was shining my lights out on it. It just stood there staring at me. And then it got low to the ground, and sulked towards me. I realized immediately this was not a deer or coyote or even a neighborhood dog escaped. It was a freaking mountain lion that was now slowly approaching me. I backed my way out of the driveway, making sure not to lose eye contact with the animal, and then busted my butt down the hill to my job. Only place open at that hour within immediate biking distance. I wasn't 100% certain it was a mountain lion when I saw it skulk. I just knew it was not any of the animals I'm used to seeing, that it was acting aggressive/defensive toward me being there. The only reason I know it was a mountain lion was as I turned the corner on the top of the hill, I tilted my head to make sure nothing was following me to see another, maybe the same one, sitting on a rock wall literally 4 feet away from me. It normally takes me 30 minutes to get to work. It took me only 10 minutes that day. I friggin' love mountain lions and big cats, but not if I'm encountering them alone in the middle of the night, especially not with my subtle but delicious curves. But this is good advice that I've heard before. If you are dealing with big cats like this, don't take your eyes off it. If you just turn and run, the chase is on, and it won't last too long. Story 2. So me and my cousin both have a love for all things horror movie and paranormal related stuff. Well, at the time, he lived in hilly, woodsy Valdosta, Georgia in a 2-story house with his dad, my uncle, his mom, and younger sister and brother. Well, we stopped there to caravan with them on our way to a family reunion in Dothan, Alabama, but frick nowhere. Well, the night we got in, my cousin started sharing all the paranormal and horror-related stuff we had learned since we had seen each other last. Well, eventually we ended up in his attic/den room, which is the only room on the 2nd floor. It's carpeted and has a chair, a computer, daybed, TV, and my cousin's game systems. But it also has 4 different recessed movable panels that, when moved, hide what are essentially storage spaces. Well, this visit was my first time I ever moved one of the panels to see what was behind it. That night, me and my cousin convinced my aunt to use her credit card to pay to watch a horror movie on his 360 in the attic room. This is unrelated, but the movie was a Spanish horror movie, I believe, and featured a family that moved into a house with a maze in the backyard with a well at the center. I don't remember much else. If you know it, please tell me. Well, we finished the movie probably around 2:30 in the morning and were tired and decided to sleep in the attic room. We made ourselves comfortable for sleep, and because I turned the TV over to somehow show about Alaska, while I'll try to sleep on the daybed. Well, a few minutes go by, and all of a sudden, we heard a sound like someone had taken a deep, long, rattly, and raspy human breath. And the breath noise came from the area behind the daybed. And the daybed sits against a part on the wall of the attic room with 2 of those 4 storage rooms behind it. Once I heard it, my cousin slowly turned to me with a look on his face like he had crapped his pantaloons and asked if I had heard the noise too. I had. We didn't get much sleep after that. We still talk about it to this day because there are no air vents or anything in that attic room that could have made that noise. It still sends a shiver down my spine. First off, just so you all don't have to look it up, I believe the film is called Atrocious, and it's meh. I don't know, not awful, but I wouldn't waste time hunting it down. And second, why didn't you look behind the panels? Come on! I'm sure you would have been fine. Story 3. I have 2. The first happened when I was in kindergarten. I used to walk to school with some of the other kids in the neighborhood. We literally lived less than a block from the school. One day I had to walk by myself because the other 2 kids were on vacation or sick or something. Either way, I'm walking home and a man pulls up beside me and starts driving real slow along with me, asking me to get in, that he would give me a ride, etc. Kept telling him no, I was fine, I lived right there, my parents were expecting me. He didn't leave me alone until I made it to my neighborhood, and I booked it from there to my house. Major stranger danger vibes. I still remember how he made me feel very scared and not at all like a good citizen trying to help a small child walking alone. The second was when I was 16. My mother and I had a flat tire on the interstate and no jack. This was pre-cell phone days, mind you. So we're sitting on the side of the interstate hoping someone will see our flashers and pull over to help us. A car pulled over in front of us and a man got out of the car and started walking to us. Never said hello, never smiled, never indicated in any way that he was friendly. He had a buck knife on his belt. If you're from the South or do any hunting, you know what this is. And as he got close to us, his hand went to that knife and he flipped the holster strap open. About that time, a jeep full of teenage boys stopped right in between us and him. The boys piled out, helped us with the tire, and that guy turned around and left without ever saying a word. If you're reading this, you can drive on a flat tire. Don't end up in bad situation. Cars are easily replaceable. Use it until it won't move anymore. Story 4. I work for a food delivery service, and on one delivery I had to go about 2 miles down a one-way road at about 10:30 p.m. There were banks on both sides, so if I wanted to leave and another car came down the road, I wouldn't be able to get out and would have to reverse backwards to a driveway. Houses around were pretty scattered, and everyone's driveways were at least 100 yards from the houses. I took notice of this driving in because I'm a woman and had my guard up. I get to the address, which is an abandoned home with no lights, and the driveway is blocked off with boards, and immediately the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It was a dead end, and the nearest house was about 700 to 800 yards away. I parked and locked my doors and called the customer, and they said they were in the trailer across the street, and they would come out to meet me. There was no trailer across the street at all, but this dude came off a dirt trail and started walking up to my car. As they were coming towards me, the guy asked if I could wait about 5 minutes for his friend to come back with a tip for me. The bill was already paid. And I politely declined, saying that I had to go back to work, out of being scared. He then got a phone call, and his literal words were, "Yeah, bro, we can make this happen. Are you on the road or what?" I put the food on the ground, said goodbye, and booked it out of there so quickly you could probably see dust behind me. That incident taught me to always trust my gut and to never worry about the tip. I could have just been extremely paranoid, but I feel like I got lucky that time. Always trust your gut. Better safe than sorry and all that, but his friend was probably bringing weed. LOL. Yeah, I mean, whether or not the intentions were evil or not, you put your safety first. Don't take a chance that it's just a misunderstanding when, if it isn't, it could cost you your life. No tip is worth what could have happened. Story 5. Content warning. Discussion of domestic abuse and possible attempted self-termination. Scroll forward 1 minute 38 seconds to skip this story. A little bit different than what's been posted so far, but frick it. I got involved with someone who turned out to have a history of domestic violence. When he told me about it, he said his ex knew how to push his buttons and he smacked her after a bad day at work. Later, he said he tried to commit self-termination because he didn't want to be like his super abusive father. Fast forward in he and his ex's relationship, and she eventually left with a moving truck while he was at work, which he called her a C for, and tried to sue her for some stuff she supposedly took, plus her half of unpaid rent due for bailing on their lease. He hasn't hit me, but things got emotionally abusive to the point I don't use the term gaslighting as lightly anymore, since he did it often enough that I was beginning to question my own sanity. I blocked his phone and got in touch with his ex, basically asked her how she managed to get away from him and keep it that way. We chatted a bit. Turns out she filed 2 police reports, one when he hit her, and another for fear of attempts on her life because he was planning to kill her. She said nothing about his self-termination attempt. Going by what he told me, they were still living together when he made that attempt. After we chatted, I had a dental appointment I needed to go to. The news on the waiting room's TV was reporting on how often domestic violence are murdered by their abuser. Unfortunately, dude knows where I live and work. I thought about getting a restraining order, but it might get him fired if it's granted. In that case, he might think I'm the reason why he was fired depending on what he's told, which would make things a lot worse. Make a paper trail with the police and with your workplace. If you do decide to file an RO, this will make it easier. Story 6. Content warning. Discussion of possible attempted assault. Scroll forward 1 minute 34 seconds to skip this story. I was riding the train after a soccer game with my brother and his wife and was standing in a compartment. A very visible/audibly intoxicated woman was sitting on the floor by herself. She complimented my shoes, not expensive shoes, and was slurring every word. I told her they were from Nordstrom's on sale as a joke and turned away from said drunk woman. A man was standing nearby and lifted his shoe up and said, "What about mine?" To which people chuckled. I thought he was just going for a joke, but he kept watching her. Once we got to a stop and it was called over the intercom, she got up to leave. The man looked left, then right, and then got off the train with her. I practice social work and have worked in victims advocacy for some time. This was every bad vibe I needed. I said, "Oh, heck no," and got off at this stop, way ahead of my actual stop. My sister-in-law pushed my brother onto the platform and they both followed me, unsure as to why I left the train. The man was 20 feet ahead with his arm around this woman as she stumbled along the platform. I walked up and said, "I just have to let you know you're acting exactly like a predator and are giving off a lot of red flags." He went on to explain his innocence, that he has a daughter her age, and that, and I quote, "I wish someone would be this protective of my daughter." We separated the two. My sister-in-law was walking with the woman and supporting her from falling. My brother and I kindly escorted the man away. When we met back up, the woman had flagged down a driver in the parking lot that she said was her boyfriend. She got in the car and rode off. I am pretty certain we prevented an assault that day. Story 7. Worked in a large store. There was a guy that had been hanging around my department. He was there quite frequently. I remember him because he was always wearing the same baby blue basketball shorts. He never talked to me. I would just notice him pass through. We had registers in our department. I walked from one side of the department to the register, and when I got to the register, I noticed this guy go past me on my right. Two coworkers at the register had this look on their face. They said he was right behind me, like his face and my hair right behind me. I had no clue. There was someone that close to me, and I never knew it. Normally, I'm pretty aware of my surroundings, but the fact that this guy got so close to me and I didn't have a clue creeped me out. A week or so later, he was on the opposite side of an aisle where my department manager caught him beating his meat in the middle of a busy store. Apparently, I was the reason he had been hanging around our department. I had a stalker and I didn't even know it. Obviously, he was arrested for jerking it in public. I only saw him once after that. I saw him walking down the highway a few weeks later, still in the baby blue basketball shorts. Never saw him after that, thank God. I think he may have been homeless. I have a lot of sympathy for the homeless because oftentimes there are reasons outside of their control or just incredible difficulties that have led them to that unfortunate circumstance. But I don't give a crap how down on your luck you are. You don't do that kind of crap to people, you sicko. Story 8. When I was in Mexico, I was staying at a decent-sized resort with a good amount of wildlife. When we first arrived, an employee warned us about the possibly aggressive wildlife, spider monkeys, lizards, fish, etc., on the trails and in the waters. These trails had cenotes, gardens, historical pieces, and a bunch of other cool stuff. I wanted to see a pre-Hispanic oven offered as a historical piece, so I walked down a dirt road in the furthest corner of the resort. The resort is about 6 to 7 square miles to see this oven. On my way out, at least 30 of these frickin' lizards were lined up making all sorts of sounds at me with their necks all flared up and crap. Also, at the resort they told us to stay on the trails because of other potentially dangerous wildlife, but I was cornered by 30 of these frickin' things in nothing but wet shorts and sandals. How do you prepare someone for a situation like that? I said, frick the trails, and I ran through those woods faster than I have ever ran before. Not quite sure what those little guys wanted from me. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.